This week, we welcome Maurice Stebila, Chairman and Founder of CxO InSyte, to discuss how XDR and threat monitoring can help detect ransomware attacks. In the Leadership and Communications section, 3 things every CISO wishes you understood. What is the BSO role and is it necessary? Cyber insurance costs up by 1/3 and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Stopping advanced threats requires knowing exactly what you're up against. ExtraHop Reveal X is the only solution that shows you not just where intruders are going, but where they've been. 90-day look back and complete network visibility across the data center, cloud, and device edge helps security teams respond 84% faster with ExtraHop Reveal X network detection and response. Explore the interactive demo at securityweekly.com/extrahop. Cyber risk and compliance automation is finally here. Legacy GRC systems cannot support the powerful, real-time automation and oversight that organizations require to take risks that matter to succeed. CyberSync continuous control automation ingests data from the IT GRC stack to update controls against regulatory requirements and risks in real time, delivering insights and visibility. See how members of the Fortune 500 are saving millions annually by visiting securityweekly.com/cybersync.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 223, recorded July 12th, 2021. I am your host, Matt Alderman, here in a sunny Colorado, but my co-host today joining me remotely, I think might be a little wet. We're going to start with Mr. Jason Albuquerque.
It's a little rainy here in New England, but you want to know what? I got my brand new aftermarket parts. I can see everything wonderfully now. It's a whole new world for me.
Oh, good. Adrian, is it sunny? Is it cloudy? Is it rainy down in Tennessee?
Yeah, it's actually, it's that time of year where we have thunderstorms kind of roll through. You know, they're kind of in and out, you know, so we'll have sunny weather and you'll make plans and forget to check the weather because it looks nice and sunny, you know, and then in the midst of those plans, those thunderclouds roll in and ruin the day. So you got to make sure you check.
Got to check. Same in Colorado. Security Weekly is proud to announce that we will be at InfoSec World 2021 in person. Yes, in person, October 25th to 27th, 2021. This year, it is over my birthday, by the way, but our annual partnership with InfoSec World is extra special as we are both business units under the Cyber Risk Alliance brand. What does that mean for Security Weekly listeners and InfoSec World attendees? You will get to see and hear from many of the Security Weekly team at the event, and you will save 20% off your World Pass. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2021 to register with our discount code. In our July 14th democast at 11 a.m. Eastern, learn how to reveal and protect your entire attack surface. Then join us July 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern to learn how a thoughtful approach to SASE can improve security and enable scalability. Finally, in our July 22nd technical training at 11 a.m. Eastern, learn how guided SaaS NDR enables rapid response. Visit securityweekly.com/webcast to register now. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts or technical trainings, they are available for your viewing pleasure at securityweekly.com/on-demand. A Chief Information Security, Compliance, and Privacy Officer with over 20 years of global technology leadership, Maurice has served as an advisor or CISO to some of the world's biggest companies, including Harman International, Samsung, General Motors, Hewlett-Packard, and Electronic Data Systems. He is the author of multiple award-winning cybersecurity awareness programs and InfoSec newsletters. Now as the founder and leader of CxO InSyte, he's using his knowledge and experience to bring together CISOs and other experts to share their insights through his platform. Maurice, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Hey, thank you, Matt. Thank you very much. And here in Michigan, the Great Lakes state, we are experiencing a lot of rain as well right now.
I grew up in Ohio, and at certain times of the year, we would say Ishigan because we could not use the M in our vocabulary.
That's right. Ohio State, right?
Yes, I am a Buckeye, born and raised.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right, we're going to talk ransomware though, and we're going to talk XDR, which is an interesting topic for Adrian. We're going to get into this a little bit, but let's start with, look, we've seen the news headlines over the past few months, right? Ransomware is everywhere. Every month, every couple weeks, a new ransomware attack comes out. I want to start this by talking about, why do we see so much ransomware? What are CISOs challenged with that make us susceptible to these ransomware attacks?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a step back a little bit before we actually get to the challenge of the CISO. As I've been thinking about this all week and been looking at some of the news articles, as you mentioned, ransomware, it's something we're seeing each and every day. There's always a brand new attack. I truly believe that the issue we're facing is that as a nation, and maybe even as a government, I don't think we're being as proactive as we should be or we can be in terms of actually taking down some of these malicious organizations and infrastructure. I think for the first time when the Colonial Pipeline situation hit and the ransom was paid, many of us were quite surprised a few weeks later when we had read that it appeared that the US government was able to retrieve, by going into that crypto wallet, and retrieve some of that ransomware money back that Colonial Pipeline paid. And I think that was the first really in the news in terms of something that was actually discussed, that we took part in. But I think we need to see more of that type of action. And again, I think we need to be more proactive in dealing with ransomware. If you think about it, I mean, we've got small businesses, medium-sized companies, and even large Fortune 500 enterprises that are against what? They're against an organization that, for the most part, is backed by a nation state, one of the largest and well-funded cyber nation states in the world. And I think it's a David and Goliath right now. And David doesn't have a good stone to take Goliath down.
But even still, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I am not a big fan, though, of the government coming into, say, private industry per se. There might be some things that the government could do or should do, or maybe will in the future. But there's a very gray line there for me. I mean, we've talked about this topic for years. Let's assume we can't take them down for a second. I still, as an organization, have to have a level of responsibility to prepare for risks in my organization and be prepared for these types of attacks. So why aren't we doing that if I can't have somebody else prevent these attacks in the first place?
Right. And so what I would say is that, just to close that one door, I truly feel that before the attacks take place, our government has a responsibility to protect the cyberspace of our national infrastructure. That's our government's responsibility, and I believe that our cyberspace has been infiltrated, and to a point to where it's affecting now all of the businesses within that cyberspace. So if in fact that cyberspace is not going to be as protected as we would like, then each of us as a CISO, as a CIO, as a CEO of an enterprise are going to have to look for additional tools to identify, of course, and to protect against this malicious activity. And these are not just your, standard tools that many of us grew up with when it comes to some of the legacy security tools. We must have tools that are looking for the anomalies, the anomalous activity going across our network. But again, many of these tools that are out there, if in fact, you are up against an organization supported by a nation state. They will use a 0-day attack if they want to get in. And I really feel that, we're still climbing. It's an uphill battle. I believe that we can do more, of course, in terms of assessing our infrastructure. We could do more in terms of self-assessments of our third-party suppliers, the supply chain. We can do more in terms of even looking and doing some of the basics within our own infrastructure when it comes to just vulnerability patching. But again, I do believe this is an uphill battle. And I still feel, I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I just think we're 3 steps behind the malicious users right now.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think it's a shared responsibility between industry and government, right? I mean, I'm kind of with Matt. It's a slippery slope, right? Where do we draw the line where the government's involvement is? We talk about advocating for open, free internet, and we're always on the side of that because we want to make sure we have the freedoms available to us. But on the other hand, I sit back and say, where do we draw the line with government? We have a responsibility. We need to be doing this together, ultimately, right? Because it's a slippery slope internationally, because you have nation state actors, right, who are brought in by their governments, and ultimately, our nation has a worldwide political game to play, right? That's the way it goes. So, it's that international policy in the way we react to a cyber attack could create disruption internationally, right? From a business perspective, from a trade perspective. So that's where I think we have to be careful, and we have to make sure there's a balance there.
Right. I don't think the U.S. wants a cyber war with anybody. But unfortunately, these other organizations that are backed, we firmly believe are backed by various nation states. They don't have to play by the same rules that in many cases we have to play by. And because of that, it's not a fair fight, right? I mean, they're going to come in and do whatever they want in terms of our infrastructure. And I'm not saying that we're not doing some cloak and dagger as well in the background, but I just know that I believe, we do have a set of rules and policies and guidelines where I think it's much more difficult, for our government to be as proactive as I think some of us may like them to be. But I think also, Matt, going back to what can we do as CISOs in terms of protecting our infrastructure, in addition to those self-assessments, in addition to the basics, right? The vulnerability, patching. I think another issue is really getting the talent on board has been very difficult for many of us. I mean, this is a sector when it comes to cybersecurity that has a negative unemployment rate. And, trying to find security analysts, trying to find senior security architects that are able to assist to mitigate some of these very sophisticated ransomware attacks can be very difficult for many of us right now.
Yeah, Maurice, you're dead on there. It's a scenario where we don't have enough talent today, and we don't have a pipeline, right? So it's twofold. That's the struggle we're having. So how do we stop the bleeding and get cyber professionals involved today, get them groomed today? And how do we make sure that, we as leaders in the industry are working with not only higher ed, but K through 12 to make sure we're building a nice, strong pipeline of cybersecurity professionals? That's the struggle. We need to tackle both sides.
There's also apprenticeships, internships, because what I constantly hear from the folks I'm mentoring is, they just can't get a foot in the door. Like they've got certifications, they, in some cases, they even have degrees, cybersecurity related degrees. And, they're doing, tech support for Apple and stuff like that. They can't find anybody willing to take on a junior position. And I mean, on the one hand, like, you can't complain about the lack of senior people available and not be making junior people more senior.
Agreed.
Yeah, the Air Force Academy here has a really good program to mentor people to get them ready for the cyber industry, but yet they don't have all the relationships with all the industries to create these internships, back to your point, Adrian, to get that foot in the door, to get them started. And so they've got the education, but they don't have the opportunity, which is another challenge in this space.
And they don't have 8,200, just constantly pumping out like these experienced folks, because, military service in Israel is compulsory. Really good way to pump out, a high volume of competent security folks.
Yeah. And, we talked about some of the tools to really identify ransomware or these type of attacks. And Matt, one of the issues, and I don't know if this is a good time to sort of talk about this right now, but I believe that the tools that we're using today, we're using various tools independently. And I think there's a challenge when we have a large number of tools in our toolbox, and they're all being used independently one from another. I think in some cases, having too many tools can bring in additional risk. And so many of us have been looking within the industry for a platform that would, from a unified perspective, allow multiple proprietary security components to be viewed all within a single platform.
Yeah, this is that concept of XDR, right? And I do want to get into this a little bit, because I want, extended detection and response is this XDR term's been thrown around for a little while now. Adrian, you and I have been talking about this with labs and some other stuff. And I guess the first question I have is define it. What is XDR? Is it EDR plus? Is it NDR plus? Is it threat intelligence SIM plus? Is it all of the above? What is XDR?
Yeah. I call it the X factor, which I think even makes it more ominous in terms of what is the X factor. And as you mentioned, the X does stand for extended, right? So it's taken that detection and response and it's extending it. And now we're even hearing about some companies who are talking about open XDR, open extended detection and response. I do like, I don't know if it's Forrester or a Gartner, but I do like their definition about a unified security incident detection and response platform. I think the key here is that platform automatically collects, automatically correlates that data from, as I mentioned before, multiple proprietary security components. So it doesn't matter if it's on-prem, public cloud, hybrid environment, a SaaS infrastructure. Those proprietary components could all be brought into what we're calling an XDR platform. And one of the huge benefits for that, at least for me, back when I was at Harman, we had both a network operations center and a security operations center. We had two different groups. And many times when we had a security incident, it would start off, with the security team, but then they'd have to, hand that over the fence to the network team to get some information, to do some isolation, maybe on the firewall. Then the network team would throw it back over the fence to the security team. And what we found is that, the dwell time was longer than it should be, because we had two different teams, trying to work together, yet they were still separate. And so by bringing those teams together, I see a lot of companies now bringing the SOC and the NOC together. In many cases, the network team wants to learn cybersecurity. The security team needs additional network expertise. So in many cases, it's a great opportunity for cross-training. In addition, you're able to deal, I think, with a cyber incident much more quickly if you bring the SOC NOC together. And by bringing them together, I think an XDR platform is just the absolute answer to allowing both teams to participate and to use network tools, security tools, all under one umbrella.
Now, I'm going to go to my co-host for two different angles here, because number one, Adrian, as you think about XDR, here's what I think of. I think of endpoint, network, threat, log, which means SIM, kind of all bundled together in this concept. And that's a pretty big market landscape when you think about the individual players all trying to expand into XDR. So want your thoughts on that one. Then I have a follow-up for Jason, because I know where his thought is right now.
Yeah, so to me, it's an evolution, not a revolution. I think if you strip out the category names, the names of these products, and just look at the value prop, and the sales pitch here, really the pitch hasn't changed in the last decade and a half, I'd say. If you look at a pitch from a SIM in 2004, 2005, it looks pretty similar to a lot of the stuff that we're seeing today. We just never got there with those products, because I think we've really bit off more than we could chew. I remember, very soon after getting our first SIM, which happened to be RSA Envision, our first instinct was to shove logs from everything into it. We had over 1,700 devices reporting into the thing, logging like 4.5 million events a day. And we tried getting endpoint in there as well, and endpoint just didn't fit. There were too many logs from too many endpoints, and that wasn't even EDR. That was just, like Windows logs from the endpoints. We didn't have the storage for it. And fast forward, and you start to see the SIMs saying, okay, we're finally doing some correlation here. The early products just couldn't do the correlations. It was humans looking at them that did it. So they're finally doing some of that, pulling out some insights in an automated manner, and then said, well, we need some way to automatically act on some of these. We started to see SOAR get built within SIM, and then SOAR became its own thing, and then EDR got built out, as kind of like the endpoint specific SIM. And I feel like we're seeing all that coming together now, saying, okay, we've got all this data, we've got insights coming out of it, but they need to be shared. They need to be all in one place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, need to be integrated. This is where I'm going to switch over to Jason, because I know, Jason, without going into vendor specifics, you love the integrated concept. In your previous role as a CIO and CISO and bringing all this together, this was nirvana for you.
Absolutely, 100%. And I'm a fan of the ecosystem, right? I love a security fabric across the entire organization. And that's network, endpoint, server, application, identity, SaaS products, whatever the case may be, bringing it all together, right? So that's why I love the play for these organizations. And there's a few of them out there doing it fairly well today, bringing that security fabric. Because, to go back to Maurice's point, we have, 60, 70 point products out there. And, we're lucky if we can adopt 20% of each of them. So how successful are we going to be there, right? We're not going to be successful if we have all of these tools, all of these things to manage, all of this overhead to manage, and they're all separate siloed systems, right? Now you have to have an SME for every single one of those. Why not bring in an ecosystem? Honestly, I would rather have an ecosystem of products that offer me integration and context, and maybe they're not in the upper right on the Magic Quadrant, all of them. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get better performance, better context, better visibility for my team, and a better outcome than having 60 of those that are up in the upper right-hand quadrant. I'm telling you right now, where you see better results because you have that integration, you have that ecosystem, you have less overhead for the team, less noise for the team, better response time, better ability to actually execute on things.
And speaking of the team, it's a great place. I know I've probably mentioned it before on BSW, but the security outcomes report that Scientia Labs did, one of its findings was one of the key things for employee morale, for talent retention in cybersecurity are integrated tools.
Absolutely, 100%.
They feel like they can get something done. They're not trying to manage, 5-6 tools a piece. They actually get to do security work instead of just managing tools all day.
100%. It takes your team from keep the lights on, right, and just turning the engine and keeping the lights on, to actually adding value and growing and transforming the organization, because you're taking all that additional noise off the table of having to manage 60 products that don't talk to each other.
Absolutely. And I think as XDR continues to mature, we are seeing some vendors out there now providing an XDR solution that not only integrates when it comes to identifying, but also integrates when it comes to actually protecting, so that, from within that's your single XDR platform, you can, go to your Cisco firewall and you can, block a port. Within your XDR platform, you can go to your EDR, tool, whether, whatever that may be, and you can isolate an endpoint. There are a few companies out there that I believe are mature in that area, and those capabilities are available today. And I believe having this integration, this XDR platform, is really a huge step when it comes to cybersecurity and our response to ransomware. Whether it, and there's a lot of companies out there now that are throwing XDR, within their presentations, their multimedia, their websites, whether it be Dell SecureWorks or ReliaQuest or Stellar Cyber. I mean, these are all great XDR companies. If you haven't investigated into an XDR platform, I really believe now is the time. If not, I believe you're going to continue to be very vulnerable.
So that's my last question for you, Maurice, right? As Adrian said, it's an evolution, not a revolution. So where should people start? Because my guess is the path varies depending on what things you've mastered and what things you haven't mastered. Can you give some guidance, some recommendations on where should CISOs start their XDR journey? Because you can't go full in XDR. You got to start somewhere.
No, you can't. So first of all, do your homework, do your research. As I mentioned, many people are claiming to be XDR compatible, and I truly feel that there's a small subset out there that are truly providing what I'll call an open XDR solution. So one of the things as you're doing your research and investigating into what type of XDR solution is going to work for you, it's really going to be, can I integrate the tools that I have today into this new platform? There are some platforms out there that I believe will encourage you to sunset your tools. And you may not want to sunset your tools right away. You may want to integrate those tools into the platform and then maybe sunset some of those tools, some of those legacy tools later on. So look for a tool that will integrate with whatever network tools you're using and firewalls and endpoint detection tools you're using. Make sure that there are connections and integrations into your current tool set. I really think that's where to start initially.
I think that's a great piece of advice. The other one I think you would say is talk to your congressperson and maybe try to legislate cyberspace protections or something.
Yeah. And again, I'm not advocating that the government come in into our systems per se. Okay, what I'm really saying is that if there are bad actors out there and they're doing nothing but destroying our cyberspace, if we're able to stop them way out, within their own infrastructure before they attack ours, I'm just in favor of taking some of those sites down. And I do believe we're getting very close to seeing additional legislation that I think will allow us to do more than we're doing today. I think we have to. I mean, we've seen, some of the largest cyber attacks in a decade. And you throw ransomware into that, and things are getting pretty bad. So I think we've got to take some drastic action. And that drastic action, both from a government perspective, but also I think we need to look and, hopefully, XDR, it'd be great if it was the panacea here, but, I think it's a place to start.
Yes. Well, thank you, Maurice, for joining us on Business Security and having this conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me. I had a great time. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week. and follow us on our newest live streaming platform, Twitch. Security Weekly is excited to announce that Security Weekly Unlocked will be held in person this December 5th through 8th at the Hilton Lake Buena Vista. Call for presentations and early registration for Security Weekly listeners is open now. Visit securityweekly.com/unlock to submit your presentation and register for the early registration price before it expires. Gentlemen, articles of the week. We got some related topics here to our last segment because I always like to bring those in. But I started with some CISO stories. And this first one, the 3 things every CISO wishes you understood. Jason, the first one was really interesting to me because we've known this, right? Like the CISO's role is changing before ours, of course. So why do we have people to understand that? But anyways, the other 2 were more interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's I did like this article, and it's 3 of many things practicing CISOs wish the organization understood, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, all right, the CISO's role is changing. So I'll put it into context just from my experience, right? And it's working with other business leaders and just, getting them up to speed on our industry and letting them know that, listen, it moves at such a rapid pace. Conversations we're having today may change tomorrow, and know that. Know that I'm here as an advisor to you within the business, and I'm going to bring you the latest intelligence that I have available to me, right? And know it's just rapidly changing. It's changing faster than the pace of technology because we have to keep ahead of that pace of technology. So, it's really getting the business unit leaders to understand the rapid pace of what we're doing, how quickly it's changing, how quickly we're integrating into the business, how quickly we're adding value outside of technology and adding value to our clients. So it's really just having that conversation. I actually liked that one because that's more of an exercise in leadership versus the technology or the cybersecurity practice or the practitioner side. This is more of a leadership skill to be communicating, that pace of change within our industry. We have to be doing that.
Yeah, and understand its impact to the business, right?
Yep,
which is the whole second one, which is where I see the real value is that you're communicating, collaborating across the different business units to understand how the industry changes can or will impact the business side of this so that you can come to the table and have a conversation on how best to move forward.
100%. And I added in here one piece that was missing, and that's customer interaction, right? Not just internal business units, but from my perspective, I have the philosophy if I want to get in front of our customers as well and have those conversations. I want to know what our customers' needs are to make sure that we're adhering to them and making sure that, what we fall in line with their needs and their regulatory and compliance needs and cybersecurity needs as a third-party vendor. So, it's internal business relationships across the entire organization. And hey, by the way, don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone and start having conversations with your customers as well. Partners, third-party vendors, all of that.
Yeah, and you see that a lot more in your day-to-day than some of us do, at least. Well, I mean, I do. I'm talking to our customers all the time, but not everybody gets that opportunity, especially like you do, to get out there and talk to partners and customers.
Yeah. The more relationships you can build, the better context and base of knowledge you're going to have. And it's just going to be a feeder system of information and trading information. I don't know how many times I have conversations with security leaders at customers where I'm like, listen, let's bounce ideas off of each other. Let's work together. Let's collaborate. Let's share information. So it becomes a great network.
I get a question for you, Jason.
Sure.
How much of that, the common idea of what the CISO does, do you think comes from where they are in the organization, who they report to?
So here's my personal philosophy and the way that I've always operated myself. My title, and I'm going to talk about this later in another article, my title and my level in the organization does not stop me from being a cybersecurity leader for the entire company. It's not going to stop me, right? So whether or not I need to start evangelizing upstream, influencing upstream, and driving upstream, if I have to do that, I will, right? And I've done it in the past. I've done it in the past where I've had, layers of leadership between myself and the CEO. And, I worked very, very hard to start influencing upstream and ultimately ended up reporting to the CEO. So, I don't allow a title or a hierarchy to dictate my leadership style.
I like that approach, by the way, because we will get into it in that one article, but let's wait because I have some different angles on that article. Critical initiatives for the second half of the year. Now, this came from a vendor, but it was interesting because it's got the vendor slant on it, but these are some of the big areas we were just talking about a little bit in the previous segment, which is why I left this article in. It talks about some of the challenges around SOC automation. It talks extended detection and response in some of the buzz terms. So I thought it was interesting. I'm curious, Jason, though. This can't be the whole list, and and
it's definitely not in order of priority either. I ended up putting it in an order of priority from what I'm seeing out there in the industry from customers and the conversations we're having. And I'll kind of lay it out for everybody and I'll give the why. So I put number one and really close number two together, and they, depending on your organization, they could flip flop, but it's cloud transformation and remote workforce monitoring. Those are two I hear a lot of. And here's why. It's the business initiative that's pushing that. It's the business, right? In some instances, it's happening with or without the security team. So jump on board if you can, right? Because it's going to happen no matter what. The other aspects we have a little bit more control over, right? The extended detection and response, which I put at a number three because, people are thinking about, I need better context. I need less overhead. I need less tools. So they're having those conversations. Then I put security operations center next because they're having that, build versus buy type conversation about having, a SIM SOC type service. And I'm hearing that a lot these days. What do I do? Do I bring in talent? Oh, wait a minute. I can't find talent. Right. So who can I go partner with? Right. From the SIM SOC perspective. And I put detecting and preventing insider threats. I see that coming as part of other conversations like, that SIM SOC conversation or that building out a program conversation that they're having. I kind of put that in number five. And then analytics and risk-based controls, until they get all those other things straight, unless it's a risk organization, they're not having those conversations right now.
Right. And that's the fear, right? Is because we can't have the broader, risk conversations right now. We're just way too tactical, just trying
exactly.
to deal with
That's the problem, right? And it's working with clients on that journey to maturity. And once you start getting that risk-based mindset, now they're starting to think in that area, right? But a lot of these things are coming up front for organizations that have small security teams, if they can find the talent. You're seeing a lot of folks doing the vCISO where they have to outsource to another company and have a vCISO come in. So
one thing I found confusing here, given the conversation we just had about XDR, why is XDR separate from SOC automation here? Like, isn't that a component of XDR?
Yeah, I do. I think it is, right? I think if you're thinking in that ecosystem security fabric mindset, like we've been talking about for months on the show, yeah, it is. It's a similar conversation. So, that's why I tether them 3 and 4, right? Because they're a lot of times they're part of the same conversation. Right. But again, I put 1 and 2, the things that are outside of the control of the security team because they're happening. They're gonna happen with or without the security team.
Yeah. Talking about risk, the risk of disconnect between CIOs and CISOs, unless you own both roles, I guess,
Some people have.
Yeah, some people have figured that out. But I guess this could be a challenge, right? They talk about
critical. It's absolutely critical. Oh my God. Yes, 100%. There needs to be a very strong relationship between the CIO and the CISO, no matter where each other fall in the org, right? Again, it's a conversation of lead from whatever level you're at. If you report to the risk officer, you have to have a good relationship with the CIO. If you report to the CIO, you should have a good relationship with your boss, right? If you fall in another department, if you're on your own, right? If you're running as a peer to the technology team, you have to have that great relationship. Now, I would argue you want that same type of great relationship with all of the other business leaders as well, right? Honestly, you really do. But technology obviously plays a big role in cybersecurity. So that's a critical relationship right there.
Yeah, and Adrian, you brought it up in the previous segment about the outcomes report, and one of the other takeaways from the outcomes report was retiring legacy systems. And that is a CIO conversation on technology refresh to reduce your security risks. And if the CIO and the CISO aren't having those conversations, they're never going to achieve that outcome.
No.
I think that was the number one correlation on that report. Out of all the outcomes they found, proactive tech refresh was number one for helping to achieve security objectives.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that technical debt plays a big role in there, right? And honestly, the other thing I would say is involve other key stakeholders. Like I said, have that same kind of relationship with other business unit leaders. If you're talking about security around an ERP system, bring the CFO into the conversation. They're an opinion, they're a stakeholder. Why not? Right? If you're talking about systems that affect your HR team or your services team, whatever the case may be, bring in those other stakeholders because now you can have, a very holistic conversation with the CIO, with yourself, and with that business unit owner, right? With the business unit owner, and really talk about outcomes for the organization as a whole. Because, yourself as a CISO could be sitting down with the CIO, make some decisions, and then all of a sudden you have the CFO say, "That's not how it works. No, you didn't even talk to me, right? You didn't have a conversation with me. It's going to affect my entire team. It's not how it works." And they're going to put a big roadblock up in front of that. So involve other stakeholders when you're having those conversations, because you're not living in a silo where it's just technology and security. It's technology, security, and the business.
Right. And I think what's interesting with the things I learned, like at Cyber Risk Alliance, you start with the CFO because it's all about revenue and EBITDA impacts and any changes you want to make. So you just learn that early here.
Yeah, you make them happy. Everybody's going to be happy.
Right.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We can have the platform discussions later. We better make sure the money's there.
Yeah, it's like the if mama's happy, everybody's happy. It's the CISO in an organization or the CFO.
The CFO, yeah, it's always CFO. That ties into this BISO story, right? We talked the BISO a couple months back. This new role of Business Information Security Officer. What is it? Is it necessary? What I took away from this in large organizations, I don't think small organizations, a BISO is necessary. I don't think there's a big enough. But when you get into very large, highly distributed organizations, I think having this role is very interesting to work to enable more security awareness, more integration with the business units. I thought these 4 points of kind of some of the areas that the BISO can focus on for the CISO were actually positive.
Oh, absolutely. I always equate it to having, back in the day, and it still happens now, right? CIO has always had high-level business analysts embedded within the business unit, so they could be that translator between technology and the business, right? And it was really that relationship of go in there, understand the business, so that way we can properly serve the business, right? The business unit. And really guide them through their technology journey because we understand what they're doing. I look at this role as the same. And to be honest with you, take the title away. I feel that a security team should understand the business, right? So you should have team members who are engaged with finance, who are engaged with HR, who are engaged with the services unit, whatever the case may be. And again, it may not be a BISO role, but have folks who understand the business, who can have the business conversation and translate it back to the security team, and vice versa. Translate security initiatives back to the business unit. It's beneficial. I think it's a strategic move. It's like playing chess, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're thinking ahead for those organizational units, and you're bringing that deep relationship in there because now they realize you understand their business, you understand their pains, and you understand the outcomes they're trying to achieve for the company.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like overall the theme that you're talking about there, Jason, is we need to be more social. We need to build some equity in the company, have these conversations, have relationships with other folks in the organization. If you're the CISO, it's if you want to be treated like another executive, act like one.
Absolutely, and understand what they do. Having that deeper level understanding of how they function as a business unit, their processes, their staff, what strategic outcomes they're looking to achieve. Having that level of understanding is important, right? And again, if you're a large organization, you can put bodies in front of that and say, I need someone embedded within every business unit. That's the BISO model. Or you can be a smaller organization and maybe have 5, 6 people. And, myself as a CISO, I'm responsible for knowing HR and finance and those. And maybe my director, I give some responsibility in understanding some of the other business units and building those relationships, right? And you scale it down from a personnel perspective, but that doesn't mean don't have the understanding, don't have the relationships, right? That doesn't mean that. You still want to go out there and have those relationships and have that understanding of the business.
Agreed. All right, now our hot button article of the day, I think. What does it take to be a cybersecurity professional? I like how the article started, but then it lost me. I got completely lost in the middle of this thing. I love the way he framed this around the pilots and the shortage of pilots. My neighbor's a pilot. We talk about this all the time. Just getting pilots back to work, getting them trained, getting them back certified, etc., is a challenge for the airline industry. And he uses that analogy in the cybersecurity profession. I was like, yes, now give me a path. And it wasn't there.
No, you're absolutely right. I felt the same way reading the article. He pointed out with pilots, there's the shortage of qualified people. There's a talent gap with the existing people because they haven't, they've fallen behind over the course of the pandemic and they haven't been keeping up. There's a ton of new folks who want to get involved, and there's a ton of job openings, right? And they're in the middle of that struggle. That's where we are in a cybersecurity world, right? There wasn't a lot of solution conversation here, but I think we touched upon it a little bit in the previous segment, right? It's how do we start getting internships and co-ops to get people up to speed, right? And really get them embedded in a security team and learning the day-to-day of what that means. How do we start taking, curriculum in university and make people workforce ready? Because there's so many instances where we get folks coming right out of school, right out of college, and we have to spend 6 months training them on the real world. I don't think that's right. They should be workforce ready. And then pipelining, right? Not every high school student, not every 12th grader is going to be ready for college when they graduate, if they're ready for college at all. How do we empower them, right, going through 12th grade to be workforce ready out of the gate for an entry-level cybersecurity job? I think we got to take a holistic approach across the board if we want to tackle that. And we have to look at it from every angle.
Yeah, agreed. And where I wanted to take this a little bit is living one exit from the Air Force Academy, where my son just graduated high school. I think about the program. I think about they go to flight school, they learn to fly, they serve their country. They then come into the commercial side. The commercial entities recruit out of those different programs. They build training curriculum around the different aircraft. I mean, it's a well-oiled machine. And where I wanted him to go with this article was, how do we do a better job tying into these programs from a recruitment? How do we build better training programs to bring these folks in at a junior level and get them up to speed? Because I think you could learn a lot from what the airline industry does, bringing those pilots out of the military, making them commercial ready, and getting them off onto their careers. If we could do something analogous to that, that might be a better way to do this, which includes internships and all the other things you talked about, but he didn't go there.
But what does that? What does that take? Right? That takes a, I say shared responsibility all the time, because I really believe we have to be attacking these things from multiple places. That's a shared responsibility between multiple organizations, right? Number one, industry, because we have to be opening up those internships and co-ops and letting those kids in, right? Higher ed, they have to engage with industry to make sure we're developing workforce ready curriculum, right? So they can get out of college and get to work right away for us. It's government, because Department of Labor and Training, that matters. That funding matters, coming from a federal level and a state level. And by the way, the government from a state Department of Education perspective for K through 12, they need to have better CTE programs where they're partnering with industry, and we're helping them build that entry-level curriculum. So that way in 12th grade, when they graduate, they have some college credits, maybe they have some certifications, and maybe they can actually get to work right away if they're not if they're not ready to go to college.
I think the difficulty with this analogy is that cybersecurity is not like, finding pilots. It's more like running an airport. Like there's such a wide range of skill sets you need and jobs you need done. Flying a plane is a very specific skill set. And sure, we've got some of those within cybersecurity. But I don't think you can use that to describe our hiring difficulties entirely. I think part of the problem is taking any job within cybersecurity and immediately saying, you need these cybersecurity degrees and certifications and things like that. And if you look at Andy Ellis, who was the CISO at Akamai for something like 20 years, gave a great interview on another podcast. I think it was Alan Alford's podcast, who has actually been on either BSW or ESW. He's got a podcast called Cyber Ranch. And he goes over a lot of the clever things he's learned about hiring over the years. And he hires journalists when he needs somebody to write reports, because Akamai produces a lot of reports. And he's like, well, who's good at writing and producing reports? Journalists. So he goes finds a journalist that's covered cybersecurity, that already knows the lingo and stuff like that. He hires teachers. If you strip off the title of the job rec and you just look at the skills you need in there, you found there was a heavy overlap with teacher skill sets. He hires librarians. You need somebody to organize a whole bunch of information. Who cares what buzzwords are in use? Go find somebody who's really good at taking a ton of data and organizing it. Librarians are literally taught to do that. Nobody is taught to do that in the cybersecurity space. They most of the degrees are based on forensics, for God's sakes.
Yeah, and see, that's where I think industry, working with departments of labor and training, can make some headway, because there are folks who are without work currently, whose background could, lend to some level of diversity in the cybersecurity team. Like you just mentioned, right? There may be out of work librarians who need a job. And if you can tie your job description to that skill set, why wouldn't you hire, right? It's a skill set that you need. But that's where I think finding folks who had other careers, working with a DLT, a Department of Labor and Training, and finding those folks and being able to bring them into your organization is key.
That's where Mr. Bill Brenner cut some of his early cybersecurity journalistic skills before we ended up bringing him here to run our custom content team. So
and Martin McKay and was an analyst, and Steve Reagan is there now. And he was a journalist for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to us to go hunt. It's up to us to go hunt for that talent, though, because if you put a job description out there, folks may not want to apply because they're scared, because it's not their industry. It's out of their comfort zone, out of their lane, right? It's up to us to go recruit and find.
Right. It's funny you say that, Jason, because when I built out the new team, I actually did the recruiting before I did any job description. I was out looking for the skill set I wanted, talking to the people I wanted. Then I wrote the job description after I talked to them and a few other people about what I was looking for. Because you're right. Sometimes you write the job description, it turns people off. But when you talk to them first, they're like, yeah, send me the job description when you have it. I'm good. Getting Bill and Deb to come over, I was recruiting them before I even had a job description in mind.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Through networks. That's the best way to hire people. There's already a trust relationship there. You already know them, or somebody else who works with you already knows them. But I think to summarize it, people saying, that the hiring pool is too small, there's no unemployment. The problem isn't that the pool is too small. The problem is that their hiring criteria is too narrow.
Yep. Agreed. Agreed.
Yep. We're fishing in too small of a pond. We need to open it up.
Yep.
Yeah. Two more articles. NIST defines the critical application component. This is a really interesting article because NIST has started to define this is considered critical software as part of the executive order. And when you read this, you start thinking, wait a minute, designed to run with elevated privilege privilege or managed privileges. Well, that's pretty much every endpoint.
We were talking about too
on
narrow.
every box.
We were talking too narrow. Now we're talking way too broad.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed. In the article, it was talking about, this is a journey. It's going to be refined. And I read that sentence. I said, thank God. Because it has to, right? I mean,
yeah, it has direct or privileged access to networking or computer resources. It's pretty much every endpoint agent. Control access to data or operational technology, performs a function critical to trust. I mean, this is a really, really broad scope. There is going to be a ton of software that gets categorized under this definition, and people just need to be aware of it now, because I mean, you think about anything that has management capabilities, security control capabilities, they all fall under this scope.
Right. So
that's the danger.
My PDF reader may be excluded.
Yeah. Well, that's the danger right there. From a vendor perspective, every vendor gets to say that, they qualify for this special budget that you've got for critical software.
Yeah. No thanks. Okay. Last story.
Too broad.
I have to throw that article in there. Right. I mean, because I think people have to know this eyes wide open. You're out developing a piece of software those are pretty broad components to be classified that way. Anyways, that means SBOM and all this other stuff come into play. So just forewarned. This last article is on cyber insurance, and this one talks about how cyber insurance premiums have gone up by a third. A third is nothing to what I think is coming. This article talks about the written policies, the scope of those policies, the change in how those policies are going to be written. I think a third higher is nothing compared to what's coming.
No. I mean, these insurance organizations got slapped in the face with what cybersecurity really means, and now they're realizing they're under the gun. So I see prices going up, and honestly, I see requirements getting more stringent. I'm already having conversations with insurance providers that are saying, we need to do more than just the checklist. We need to do an assessment of technical debt. We need to do an assessment of security posture, things like network security assessments and penetration tests and, technical debt assessments prior to actually signing these organizations on board. So that way they know what level of risk they're taking on and they can price accordingly.
And I think that's not a huge surprise. We saw that coming. I mean, they before you get life insurance, you gotta jump through some hoops there. Do you smoke tobacco? How long have you smoked tobacco? We knew this was coming. They just needed enough data to be able to do it. So it shouldn't be a huge surprise. But the flip side of it, not just what you're required to do and how much they pay out, and whether they're willing to pay out, another side of it is, they're going to be looking at ways to reduce the costs. And one of the things I've seen come up is, we know who you have on retainer is amazing, but they're super expensive. So you have to respond to this incident using our team, our pre-approved vendors.
Yeah, I see that all the time. Where the first thing I see the cyber liability insurance companies doing is they assign a fiduciary, an attorney. They literally penny pinch every spend, right? They have to sign off on every penny spent. And then from there, we have, our incident response team, and that's all you can do. You can't bring in your own. We have ours, and this is who you're going to use.
Yep. Yeah, and they're going to control the recovery process. They're going to control the vendors. Everything's going to get controlled. And then they're going to exclude as much as they can out of an attack. That's the other thing that's coming, right? You're going to start to look at different exclusionary clauses in certain scenarios where they don't even have to pay anything because they're going to figure out a way to reduce their payouts at some point.
Yep. 100%.
Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And we'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.